Hello, Joey here. Uh, been a minute. Been having to look some stuff up because I wanted to be absolutely certain about what I'm talking about, which pretty much knew most of it, but there's a few things I learned. Um, we are here today. Um, it'll end up being more in one video because of the information, so much of it. But we're here to talk about these. And that is birth certificates. Now, I'm sure everybody's seen this or that, you know, on other channels about sovereignty and, you know, discharging your bond and whatnot and all that. But before we get that far, I'd like to give you a little history lesson on how we arrived where we are today. Okay, so bear with me. Um, I don't have the equipment to do uh, PowerPoints and all that stuff. So um, pretty crude, pretty crude stuff here. Just a phone and me and information passing it on to you folks. And so here, um, and since 1932, here's a fact that you may not know. Since the U.S. went bankrupt in 1933, all new money has to be borrowed into existence. Meaning, I guess, the fairies, come along and poof, there it is. There's the money. But no, but really, um, borrowed into existence. When you borrow something, usually means you have to pay it back. They give it back or whatnot. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it does. But anyway, so at any rate, when this takes place, all states started issuing what a serial numbered uh, uh, certificated certificated warehouse receipts. And these warehouse receipts were for births and marriages. Now, they did this in order to pledge the people as collateral. Pledge us people as collateral. If anybody knows anything about any, banking and, collateral, isn't that something that money is borrowed against? If you don't have enough collateral, then I don't think you're going to get a loan. Now, if they're issuing these warehouse receipts to keep track of, people and using the people as collateral, the warehouse receipts really didn't mean anything at all except for a way to keep track of people. Didn't mean shit to us. I mean, hell, if we got married, we knew we got married, or if we had a baby, we knew we had a baby. Anyway, so these warehouse receipts, they come into existence. They made them for when people, for births and marriages, in order to pledge the people as collateral against those loans and municipal bonds taken out with the, guess what? Federal Reserve Banks. I don't know. It just totally blows my mind, you know. Financial livestock. They got a technical term for it. You'll learn here soon. But anyway, these Federal Reserve Banks, they call it the full faith and credit of the American people is said to be that which back the nation's debt. Our nation's debt, our money we owe, is backed by full faith and credit. Do you have full faith and credit? Because I sure as the hell don't. I don't want any credit. Technically speaking, I can honestly say I'm debt free. You know, I don't have a whole lot of nothing. Matter of fact, I don't have shit. But I don't know anybody shit. So, you know, there's that. This full faith credit, this full faith and credit, basically meaning that the American people's ability to labor and pay back that debt. So, all you people out there who can hear my voice, full faith and credit, born from the bankruptcy that started warehouse receipts being kept for births and marriages, which in turn turned the American people into collateral. So the U.S. government could take out loans, municipal bonds taken out, so they could take out municipal bonds with the Federal Reserve. And then the full faith and credit means that they done this with the intent that the American people's ability to ability to labor and pay back that debt for them. Are you following me? I know it may get a little boring, but I mean this is serious, important shit. Now, this is all going on back in 1933, around the Depression time, when a lot of margin calls were called in by the banks, which personally I am, you know, it's just my opinion, think was planned by the elites who own the Federal Reserve to put the country into a depression in order to implement fractional reserve banking, which will come later. But anyway, in order to catalog its labors, the government needed an efficient, methodical system of tracking its property to that end. I guess if I'm collateral, you know, I am property. I mean, if I have collateral and I get a loan against that collateral, I'm borrowing money against my property. So, you know, Sad but true. Sad but true. All right. Now, basically, I call it financial livestock, but um, this is something I learned recently. Um, Humans today are looked upon merely as resources. Human resources. Now, where do you hear that term like all the time? Human resources, human resources. Well, here you go. If you go to get a job, okay, in so a place is hiring and you apply for a position with their company, what is the first department of that company you go through? I'll give you 3 guesses. Human Resources Department. Coincidence? I don't believe in them. That has roots. But the people are resources to the government. Their birth certificates are a security on the New York Stock Exchange, which is why if you look at the bottom of your birth certificate in America, it'll say at the bottom, this is printed on security paper. Do not accept if not on full color security paper. And also, I finally found out what the hell this was. It drove me nuts. But at the bottom, you'll always have a series of numbers, red numbers printed at the bottom, in which those numbers are, they basically are numbers saying it's a security stock exchange number on the World Stock Exchange, which is right there. See that? That is a stock exchange number on my birth certificate. Now, oh, okay. I can't see, but void if it's upside down, backwards, and shit. But anyway, you catch my drift. You picking up what I'm laying down. All right. Well, now, with that being said, the American people are worth money to the international bank. All right. The international bank bought our government in the 1930s. So technically, our government hasn't been our government since the 1930s. Basically, our government is the international bankers. All right. And we are nothing more than a means of working off debt for them. Pisses me off. I mean, it really does. Pisses me off. There's not too many people who touch this subject. I might not even be able to upload it. I don't know. I'll find out. But the history lesson continues. Now that we know that we are collateral and municipal bonds are taken out against us being property of our government, which in turn is international bankers. I'm connecting the dots here, and it's not pointing to anything good. All right. Now we're up to we're going back to around the Civil War when Lincoln was president, because this seems to be when the elites really planted the seed for the everything to just fall in line afterwards. But anyway, when the government started assigning government assignment of a dollar value to the heads of citizens in America began on July 14th, 1862, when President Lincoln offered to free slaves. Now, if anybody in their history books remember, Lincoln is known, one of the more popular things he's known for is freeing slaves. Now, I always thought that, before I was awake, he did it because it was the right thing to do. All right, nobody should be a slave. I don't care what color you are. Nobody should be forced to do anything they don't want. Now, with that being said, when President Lincoln offered 6% interest bearing bonds to states who freed their slaves, they did it on a per head basis. Now, per head basis tells me that they was taking names and making some sort of warehouse receipt for whatever states with whatnot. That's what I'm getting from that. But note, keep in mind that the government knows that it can only extract so much money out of the economy. So this keeps them this creates a problem, because if there's only X amount of money in the economy, then obviously there's only X amount of money that the government or international bankers can retrieve from it. Now, what do they do about it? Well, their idea is to bankrupt private owners so that the banks who are behind the syndicate become the owners of all the assets in the country. Did I just say that? Oh shit, I just said that. You know what? I like saying it. I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it again. Their plan to solve this conundrum of only being able to take so much money out of the economy was to just take the fucking economy over completely. So their idea is to bankrupt private owners, put them out of fucking business, so that the banks who are behind the syndicate become the owners of all the assets in this country. Ask yourself a question. What did the Great Depression do? Think about it. How many private owners shut the hell down and banks took over everything? I think their plan worked very, very, very well. Well, basically, the Great Depression, that's the bottom line. This scheme, or it was the motive. You know, the figuring out a way that they could get around the problem of only being able to extract so much money out of the economy was the motive behind the Great Depression, because the Great Depression was their idea to bankrupt private owners so that the bankers who are behind the syndicate become the owners of all assets in this country. There you go. You got the problem, okay? Then you got the motive to solve the problem. And then you got the problem solved because it all happened. All right. Now, by encouraging Congress to spend money that doesn't have money that it doesn't have, Congress has to turn around and lean on American labor and American private property for collateral. They do this by fraudulent conversion of your birth certificate. Fraudulent conversion of birth certificates. Example. All right, here's an example. I might be paraphrasing here. I'm not sure. When I get done, any sources that I've used, I'll put them down there. But doctors who are franchisees of the state are obligated to sign, or excuse me, doctors who are franchisees of the state are obliged to sign birth certificates and forward them on to Secretary of State. All right. Now, the doctor that delivers your baby, if he's a state franchisee, he's more than happy to sign, and then forward it to the state, which, then certified copies are made by the Secretary of State and forward those birth certificates to the Department of Commerce. All right, in Washington, D.C. The Department of Commerce does the same damn thing. All right, so you have an original birth, then this fraudulent conversion begins and works its way from doctor and hospital all the way to Washington, D.C. and the Department of Commerce. And then they, in turn, do the same thing and make more certified copies and forward them to the International Monetary Fund, which is the international bankers. And I guess their head office is in Brussels, Belgium. I'm not sure if it's still there or not or what, but all I know is that's the top, man. You know, and all along, all these copies and forwarded copies and blah blah blah, you don't know a fucking thing about it. They don't tell you nothing. Hence, fraudulent. Okay? You know? Boy, I mean, we would be in prison the rest of our lives if we was to do something like that. I'll tell you. Anyway, the IMF, International Monetary Fund, they loan these huge sums to various governments around the world, including the Congress of the United States. Okay? This is I'm not sure if this is before, during, or after the Federal Reserve, or if they're one and the same, or if they're in a at any rate, I'm working on it. Congress needs something for collateral, and what they use for collateral is our certified birth certificates. Okay, which is us. Can't have a birth certificate if you don't have a person to go with it. So they're still using us as collateral. Now, the birth certificate itself, man, I have a cold. Excuse me. The birth certificate itself in America, they get treated as certificates in equity. Certificates in equity. Equity meaning there's, money there at rest, but hasn't, been taken out or used yet. But and these certificates in equity mature on our 18th birthday. So anybody born in the United States gets a certified copy of their birth certificate, which fraudulently gets certified and copied and certified, clear up to the International Monetary Fund. It matures on our 18th birthday. The bank keeps track of these and uses the number that any particular nation has available as collateral on the international debt as performance units on the international debt. All right, so we're still at collateral, and I'm supposing that 3-year window between 1821, performance units come into play. I'm assuming. I'm not sure, but anyway, it's still, we're collateral against international debt. Now it's just not American debt. It's the fucking world debt. Now, these certificates in equity end up being regarded as performance units on the international debt. The more of these you have, the more money you can borrow. Now, that goes back to the collateral. Um, if how much money you can borrow is determined by how many performance units you have, I'm assuming now, I think it's safe to assume that a performance unit can be considered a person because it's international debt and it's all the different countries. And I'm looking at like the more citizens you have as a country, the more performance units you have, in turn means the more money you can borrow. Like China right now, they can borrow a shit ton of money because they have a shit ton of people. Now, that's just my take on it. That's my interpretation. But anyway, it's like this. The more collateral a person has, that person will be loaned more money from the banks. And the more that person can secure. So it's basically the same thing as, you know, us here in America, you know, the more money you have, the more collateral you have, which means the more money you're going to be able to get. Well, instead of calling it collateral, internationally, they call it performance units. Yeah, I think I just made some sense. But don't you find this, I mean, a little, well, excuse me, but a lot wrong? I mean, not only are we not told about stuff, but we're used as things that, I mean, it's in fucking human. It's inhuman. That goes back to the point that you pay yourself to work. We'll get to that, but uh, this is meaning that governments are securing their international debt by leaning on persons and property of their citizens. They're doing this on a massive scale and typically a fraudulent conversion of the birth certificate. I'm finding that the birth certificate is to us, most people thinking it says, you know, proof we're born. But again, I say, who fucking needs proof we're born? Our parents know we're born. Our families know we're born. You know, everybody around who knows you and your family know you had a kid. You don't need a piece of paper saying that you had a kid. So these birth certificates are important as hell to the banking syndicates and the international bankers and the Federal Reserve. Um, it's and it's fraudulent. It's a fucking fraud. They're breaking the law, and yet I don't know how many people. Like I said, I know that people have done sovereignty videos and told you how to go about claiming your birthright and all that shit, but I'm wanting to give you a lesson here on how all this is happening. I want you to have, when somebody gives you a video and tells you how to claim your birthright or take back your bond or authenticate your birth certificate and whatnot, they're giving you information, but they're not giving you the wisdom behind the reason why you want to do that. Okay? What I'm trying to do is give you some information that you can look into yourself and get a grasp on just how freeing, because I was the beginning, freeing some slaves and giving 6%, per head bonds for doing it proactively made us, everybody on the planet, a slave. But anyway, simply put, if it is not fraudulent, they would tell you. If it wasn't fraudulent, if it wasn't, a fraud, they would tell you they're doing what they're doing, But they didn't. They don't, do they? And they won't. They did tell you they were obtaining a lien or your person yourself and starting a third-party debt that you're responsible for, didn't they? They did tell you that, didn't they? What's that? You mean they didn't tell you that they were obtaining a lien on you yourself and starting a third-party debt that you're responsible for? You mean they didn't tell you that? Well, that's just odd. You figure that's something that they should tell you. I mean, hell's fire, You got somebody obtaining a lien against you, and then that lien they start against you, they start a third-party debt, and you're responsible for it. And you don't even fucking know about it. Man. You know what? You had no meaningful choice in the matter, did you? Because you didn't know shit about it. How could you? And that makes it an unconscionable contract by definition. By definition, when they did that, they put you in an unconscious contract. They say unconscionable, but you didn't know shit about it. So how can you get in a contract without knowing it or signing anything? Unconscionable meaning lack of awareness or existence by definition. Messed up. 1921. Now, this is how they sold it to the public, all right? This is how the fractional reserve banking was introduced into law. Now, in 1921, the Federal Shepherd-Towner Maternity Act. Look that up. I did. Because I didn't know this. Created the birth registration. Now, what that is, birth registration is an early form of the birth certificate. Now, No, there's no either way of looking at it. You can look at it upside down, frontwards, backwards, sideways, whatever way you want to look at it. The Federal Shepherd Towner Maternity Act that created the birth registration, what we know today as birth certificate, it was known as the Maternity Act. All right? And this Maternity Act was sold to the American people as a law that would reduce maternity and infant mortality. All right? They made the American people believe that this law would save lives. I like to live back in them days and seeing exactly how they did it, because I'm not that fucking gullible. You gonna have to explain shit to me before I voted in. And matter of fact, by the end of this series I'm doing, you may not want to be a voter at all. But a law, Maternity Act, sold to the American people, is a law that would reduce maternity and infant mortality. Meaning, they sold it to the American people, making them believe that it would protect the health of mother and child. Who wouldn't vote that in, I mean, come on. Bold ass, face ass fucking lie. And I can't believe that. I just can't believe it. And for other purposes. Another purpose that this act provided was for the establishment of the Federal Bureau designed to cooperate with state agencies in the overseeing of its operation and expenditures. Now, that sounds like a business and corporation, a corporation. That's the first hint that points our government to being bankers, to me. Anyway, what it really did is create the Federal Birth Registry, which exists today, creating federal children. Now, these federal children, we're all federal children today. Every single last one of us. The government, under the doctrine of, I don't even know how to pronounce it, parens patriae, I'm sorry, now legislates for American children as if they are owned by the federal government. This is now. What I'm telling you, what I'm reading you is now. Though the public school enrollment process and continuing license requirements for most aspects of daily life, these children grow up to be adults, indoctrinated into the process of asking for permission from the government, imposing as God. All right? Asking for permission from the government that's imposing themselves as God. Now, to do all those things necessary to carry out daily activities that exist in what is called a free country. Oh, If you have to ask permission to do anything, would you call that the definition of freedom or living in a free country when you have to ask for permission? Sounds to me like you're a child and being raised up and you're asking permission from your parents to do something, because ultimately when you're a child, your parents, basically rule you in a sense. So, on we go. Got a little bit more time left. Before the 1929, or before the 1921, before 1921, records of birth and names of children were entered into the family Bibles, okay? As were records of marriages and deaths. Back then, the church, took care of these records. These records were readily accepted by both the family and the law as official records. Do you see a strong connection between church and government today? Do you? Think about that for a minute. Because you see it everywhere. They are so intertwined. And religion used to not have nothing to do with government. But now, they're part of the same family these days. Since 1921, the American people have been registering the births and names of their children with the government of the state in which they were born. Like, I'm registered in Ohio, see? Ohio. Even though, they do this, they're registering births and names of their children with the government of the state in which they were born, even though there's no federal law requiring them to do so. So we are doing this, and we don't even have to. There's no law stating that you have to register your child for anything. They fraudulently make you believe you have to through, ignorance. Now, that's where I'm going with this. State tells you that registering your child's birth through the birth certificate serves as proof that he or she was born in the United States, thereby making him or her a United States citizen. Now, again, you don't need a piece of paper for that. For the past several years, a social security number has been mandated by the federal government to be issued at birth. Social security number. I think that is the modern day version of warehouse receipt. Now, in 1933, bankruptcy was declared by President Roosevelt. The governors of the then 48 states pledged the full faith credit of their states. So, when this happened, we're going back to how can we extract more money out of our economy? Well, National Depression happened. Elites, international bankers knew President Roosevelt had one way out. And that was to get to then 48 states to, back the full faith and credit philosophy. But including the citizenry and collateral for loans of credit from the Federal Reserve System. To with full faith credit clause of the Constitution of the United States, Article 4, Section 1, requires foreign judgment be given such faith and credit as it had by law or usage of state of its origin. So this full faith and credit put a clause in the Constitution of the United States requiring that foreign judgment be given such faith and credit, the same, faith and credit as it's here in America, by law and usage of state of its origin. It's pretty fucked up. Foreign statutes are to have force and effect to which they are entitled in the home state, and that a judgment or record shall have the same faith credit, conclusive effect, and obligatory force in other states as it has by law or usage in the state from whence taken. All right, that meaning the state claims an interest in every child within its jurisdiction. That whole paragraph I just read boils down to the state claims an interest in every child within its jurisdiction. State of Ohio stakes a claim, claims an interest on me because I'm in his jurisdiction. All right? Bullshit is what it is. It's bullshit. Fraudulent bullshit. The state will, if it deems necessary, now, get this. If the state deems necessary, and, something deemed necessary, that is a very, very, very broad stroke, my friends. It could mean anything. But if it deems it necessary, state can nullify your parental rights and appoint a guardian, trustee, over your child. What do you think about that? Seriously, what do you think about that? If the state deems it necessary, whatever that reason be, can nullify your right to be a parent, take your child away from you, put it under the guardianship of a trustee, make it a ward of the state. My email address is jdride33@gmail.com. Please, I'd like to get some email and comments on what people think about that one right there. Keep in mind, the subject of every birth certificate is a child. And that child is a valuable asset, which if properly trained can contribute valuable assets provided by the labor for many years. So, a child born, if trained properly, can provide valuable assets provided by its labor for years and years and years. I think they make that child go until they're like 60 something, right? Retirement age, many years. They're an asset. Are you am I drawing a picture for you? I hope so. Because I'm wanting you to understand when I get to how to go about, doing things with your birth certificate. I want you to understand why you're doing them. All right? Okay. I'm going to end it with this, and we'll pick up from here. But why do you think they teach teachers to not only teach their students, but their parents that their child needs a good education so that they can grow up and get a good job? It's a good question, isn't it? Why would they do that? Go back up a little bit. With proper training, teachers teach not teach teachers not only teach their students, but the parents also. So teachers are teaching our children the proper training that can help them contribute valuable to be a valuable asset for their labor for years and years. A good job. Now, they have been making the people slaves for years, and no one has ever stopped to question them on it. And I'm going to end it with that. That's going to be food for thought. Why? Why don't people stop to question it? You know? In my humble opinion, because it's through ignorance. They don't know. And ignorance isn't stupid. Ignorance means basically to ignore. Just pretend it don't exist. Ignorance. To ignore. But yeah. Why don't more people stop, and question that? At any rate, if you find this information useful, hit the thumbs up, tap the bell for notifications to get new content, share it, and peace out.